Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5. Never thought I'd be saying that, but here we are. Before I get started, I wanted to thank all of you guys. I know some of you are doing some unbelievable things for the community. I love the fact that you guys have been participating in the Zoom calls and lifting one another. For those of you who have not been on the Zoom calls, I still know that you've been playing a role in reaching out to people that need some love and some attention. So I do appreciate all of your efforts. I've been hearing some really uplifting things, and I just wanted to thank all of you for for your part in getting us to this point. I have a lot of ground that I want to cover today, but I wanted to start with something that was a pretty big announcement this week, and that announcement was the retirement of Hal Maxwell. So I have some thoughts on Hal that I wanted to share. First and foremost, for those of you who don't know, Hal's the reason I'm in management right now. He reached out to me. He had saw me speak at an event that a Coldwell Banker was hosting probably about 11, 12 years ago. And he immediately ran up to me and said, "I need you to manage an office. I think that you're the right fit for this, and I want you to consider it." And I kind of was like, yeah, I appreciate it, but thanks, but no thanks. Then a couple of years later, I felt that it was time, and reached right back out to Hal, and within 2 weeks, I was managing Maplewood office. So he really did get me started along those lines. I owe a tremendous amount to him in my career. I think he's been an unbelievable leader for our company. He's become a friend, a mentor, and I am very sad to see him go. On the other hand, and this is certainly not a reflection, a negative way on Hal at all. I'm very optimistic about the future of Coldwell Banker. I'm optimistic about who will be stepping in, although I don't necessarily know who that person is. I know the direction that the company is trying to go in. And I think that Hal is relinquishing the reins at the right time. That's kind of all my thoughts, but I do want to encourage something from all of you, and that's below is Hal's address. It's 77 Windsor Lane in Ramsey, New Jersey, and that's 07446 is the zip code. I would love for you guys to all send him, a little message, a thank you note, letter if you wish, but something that just lets him know, how special and how loved he was to this company, or he is to this company, and to all of you and to all of us. He deserves that. He's been doing this a long time, and he really has been a great leader and a great friend to many of us. I'm going to start this session off with Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So obviously that's survival of the fittest. And I started with that because I wanted to give you a few examples of different things that I've seen more recently in terms of surviving and evolving and responding to change from for several different sources. So first is Coldwell Banker. Not sure if you guys have saw this, but they came out with a whole new line of Facebook ads that all of you could use. I'm going to give you the source of that in a second, but basically says, to the people who leave the ones they love to save the lives of strangers, thank you and get home safe. There are several other ones. I love the thought. I think that it's marketing, but it really is hitting home to the message that needs to be put out there, which is a big thank you to those people that are serving us. So that was one that I wanted to share with you. There's also, several others. There's, hometown heroes that you could create and you could, uplift and point to. There's all different media that you could put on there. This is all on a new site. It's a new tool that's out that, I encourage you to take a look at. It's on CB Desk. All you have to do is click on the tile that's called Brand Serve. When you go on Brand Serve, this is what the page, the home page will look like. You could click on, campaigns, tactics, logos, all those different things. And you could actually customize it to have all of your information on there. You could do that in seconds, download it, and then push it out on all of your social media. So I think they're doing a really nice job with that. I know there's more to come on that front, but I just wanted to show it to you. And the other thing I'll say is there's also virtual open houses and stuff like that, like, templates that you could use. So that's just a tool I wanted to point out in terms of, quick response to change. Other thing I wanted to point out, Coldwell Banker based, is the video that they pushed out, the new commercial, all about home. Home, it's never been more important. Please stay home and stay healthy is what they added to the end of that screen. I thought that was something that was pretty cool. Responsive change. So yes, you could push out the video, but you could also push out the video and have the right messaging for what we're dealing with COVID-19. Next thing I wanted to talk to you about is New Jersey Realtors. They put out frequently asked questions and answers and all of that, and how to actually file for pandemic unemployment assistance. I know Nice Yard did a really excellent session earlier today in regards to unemployment and how to do all of that. I just wanted to point out those resources. You could certainly watch that video. I'll put that in the email before I send it out to you guys. I also will send over some of the links to this. I know some of you have reached out to me in regards to all that. I just wanted to give you the resources as they come out. Another thing that we saw in terms of response to change is JP Morgan Chase. Earlier this week, they said that they were raising the borrower standards for new home mortgage loans. Basically, what that means is they're requiring 20% down, and they're requiring at least a credit score of 700. So I do think that you're going to see other large banks do that. The one thing that I want to point out on all this is, like, yes, it may decrease the amount of people that will get conforming rates, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people will not be able to get mortgages. And I think that that's an important, takeaway that you should hear in all of this is, as you see these standards, tightening, yes, it does have an impact on what buyers can get homes, but it may really mean more of, what is the difference in terms of rates to those buyers. So I wanted to point that out as, evolution of change and, in today's, world right now. So I want to go back to that quote of Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So all of that's true, but I also want to, kind of switch, thoughts for a second. And, yes, we have to evolve, and yes, we have to be responsive and all of that. But there's something else that's true, another theory, and that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I wanted to bring this up because I think it's actually really perfect for the context of today. There are some of you that are struggling with basic needs, safety and security needs. Like, is my family going to be safe? Am I going to be able to support the roof over my head, food, shelter, water, all of that for physiological needs? Some of you guys are dealing with that firsthand. I'm hearing it myself, like, the concerns of, can I afford to pay for some of the things that I have in my life, knowing that I might not have the income that I once had coming in. Obviously, those are the most important things you need to address. And, that's why, when you talk about the stimulus package, when you talk about, some of the, unemployment that's being offered to independent contractors, maybe mortgage forbearances, certainly, social distancing and, sheltering in place and all of that, those are all things meant to cover your basic needs. One thing I'm also realizing is the impacts of COVID-19 are not just impacting basic needs. They're also impacting the psychological needs. Many of you, do have struggles, let's call it, with, not having face-to-face interactions and, the relationship-driven needs that we all need as humans. And I would strongly encourage you, reach out to myself, join our Zoom calls. If need be, reach out to your clients and, and your friends and your family, and, make the extra effort to continue, to build those bonds during this time, because just because you're not face to face with people doesn't mean that all of that goes away. One, it's really good for your business. Two, it's really good for you from just an emotional and psychological perspective to stay connected to the world. Obviously, embrace your family, embrace your friends, all of that. But, I do think that, reaching out to people right now is imperative. And then the self-actualization part, like self-fulfillment, that's really hard right now. Like, how do you hit your full potential in a world that's, has isolation? So we're going to talk about some of that because I think that there's some really great examples that I wanted to share that I think make sense for the context of what we're dealing with right now. The first of which is Nelson Mandela. So many of you guys know Nelson Mandela, and know he's just an unbelievable figure in history and an amazing leader. I wanted to share a quote by him, and it was this: "I didn't survive, I prepared." So Nelson Mandela said that quote in the context of Tony Robbins actually asked him this question, but he said, "Sir, how did you survive all of those years in prison?" And the answer was, "I didn't survive, I prepared." So I don't know what better context I could say this quote in than today. Yes, we're not in prison. I understand that, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But we are in isolation quarters, and we're dealing with challenges that we don't usually deal with. But if Nelson Mandela could say those words while sitting in a prison, or reflecting on his days in prison, I think that we could certainly find a way to prepare today. I did have a shift in the last week. I think that, I was dwelling a lot on all of the challenges that we were dealing with and the things that I didn't have a lot of control over, and mostly because I care about the people around me and I could tell that people were hurting. The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater their power is to harm us. I thought that was, kind of a spot on quote, because we cannot dwell on all the negativity that's out there. We can't. I watched CNN the other night, and it was talking about, they had an epidemiologist on, and they were talking about this could be a 2 or 3 year thing, and the chances of not having a vaccine and all of that, and that's consuming on some level. But I needed to kind of come off of that and just shift over to thinking differently and thinking in a more positive light. And I have this unbelievable gift that was given to me in the form of my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, Angelina. She is just such a special girl. And I know every parent thinks that on some level, and I'm certainly biased. There's no question, but she just has the biggest heart, and she's just like she leads with love and all of that. And she's also extremely, extremely positive, which in times like this, it's amazing. But in many ways, I'm leaning on her, like looking at her for to be the ball of sunshine that she is. And she said something to me the other day that kind of stuck out. It was pouring rain outside, and I felt bad because she's stuck in the house. She's 3 years old. She's there's not a whole lot to do inside of the house months at a time. And given the fact that we couldn't go outside or anything along those lines, I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, Ange. We can't go outside today. It's raining. I know that's not the most fun thing in the whole wide world, but yada yada yada." And she turned to me and she said, "Daddy, it's okay, because the rain means that there's going to be rainbows. And it also means that when it rains, that it's feeding all the flowers. So after it's done raining, all the flowers are going to come out." And I was sitting there and I'm like, whoa, she's so right. I mean, there's no question. You don't get rainbows without rain, and you certainly don't get May's flowers without April showers. So I love the fact that my 3-year-old is the one pointing this out to me, which is, it's obvious, but it's still, it's a beautiful thing. And you know what, the reality is there's a lot of us that are dealing with the rain. There's some of you guys that are in the world of flowers, and that's awesome. And, I love the fact that, people are in that place, and I hope more of us get to that place very quickly. But I would say that there's a very wide spectrum in terms of, those of us in the rain and those of us in the flowers. With that in mind, I was kind of just this self-reflecting thing. And I was thinking about, my world and where am I at in that spectrum. And I'm not easily depressed. It's not who I am as a person. So I knew I wasn't depressed. And, I hear all of this stuff online, and, all of, whether it's, clickbait online or articles or, things that I'm seeing on the TV, and the talk is all this talk about grief. So I was like, yeah, grief, I'm not grieving, that's just not where I'm at right now. And I kind of brush it off just because of who I am, and maybe it's false bravado, I don't know. But, there's a part of me that is kind of undermines grief. And then I actually looked up what grief is. And, there's 5 stages of grief. So there's denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. And again, like that didn't necessarily hit home until I defined what those things were. And, denial. So initially I was going through shock related to this. Like I absolutely was like, I can't believe that, everything is shutting down and I'm telling real estate agents not to go out and sell houses and don't do open houses and don't show or don't leave your house. Like, the fact that I'm even saying these words, there's a shock factor related to that. And then, in terms of the anger, like there was frustration. Like I've been frustrated. Everybody's been frustrated. It's not a fun thing to be stuck in the situation that we're in. So clearly that's an emotion that I've went through. The depression angle, like I have felt overwhelmed at a couple of these days. And it's not that I'm depressed, but it's more of like, it's overwhelming to hear, 5 people in a row tell you that they just lost a loved one. I mean, that's an overwhelming feeling. Like you're trying to help these people. And then you got a slew of other people that are talking about like their need for unemployment and can they afford their bills and, all the struggles that are very, very real challenges that were going on right now, on top of just real estate. And, I know that I was talking to Lynn Keller the other day, but, she was caught in the middle of the same thing where many people were kind of, explaining themselves to her. And both of us were, at the end of the day, we were kind of reflecting on the day and it was a little bit overwhelming. There's no question about it. Then there's the bargaining stage, struggling to find meaning. And I think that some of us are all, in some piece of that. And I don't necessarily mean that people are trying to find meaning in life, but maybe on some level, but I think it's more of like, all right, like how do I find, a sense of stability, even in my business? Like, how do I find meaning for what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis to better my life, better my world? There's definitely, that pull right now of what to do. And then the last thing was acceptance, which is, a new plan in place. And I think that that's where I'm at. If I had to be honest with you, is I think that I'm certainly not in the shock phase. I'm really not frustrated at this point. I personally don't feel overwhelmed. And I understand, I'm no longer struggling with meaning. Like I understand what needs to be done during this time. So I really am in that new plan in place mode. And I don't know where you guys fall in all of this, but I wanted to give you a little bit of insight of, what a new plan in place, looks like from my perspective. And, to do that, I wanted to reflect on several different things. So the first reflection, and by the way, it's funny because I was going through some of my old meetings through the years of challenges that I went through and our offices were going through and all of that. And I pulled a couple of different, slides and thoughts from those because, what better way to express that we've been through challenges before than to pull slides from the past of things that I spoke about when we were going through other challenges. So the first thing I wanted to bring up was from January of 2018. And it was a picture of, a horse pulling a plow. The whole thought process behind this picture is very simple. The plow is not going anywhere without that horse. And the exact same thing applies to all of you in terms of you're not going to progress until your head is right, until your thoughts are where they need to be, and until you find, that there can be a positive, direction that we all take in all of this. So there's a great book that is a very quick read. It's called As a Man Thinketh, and it's by James Allen. And I've talked about this before, I know in the Maplewood office. And there's a really great passage that I pulled. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll read a portion of it, and the rest of it's up. You can certainly pause this video. In all human endeavors, there are efforts and there are results. The result is proportional to the strength of effort. Chance or fate has nothing to do with it, except to the degree that we create our own luck and act on opportunities. Achievements are dreams realized. So I started with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I talked about self-actualization being at the top, and that's a really hard challenge right now, and it is. But the one thing I'll say about that is you're never going to get to accomplishment or to any positive momentum until your thoughts are in the right place. And I want to show you that exact same picture again, but I kind of want to caption it. And it's the horse is your thoughts. Your actions are the plow. So yes, actions are what get things done. But until your thoughts are in the right place and until your thoughts are moving in that right direction, you're never going to carry through on actions. I think all of you need to stop and really think about your thoughts right now and what you're going to do moving forward, because we don't know how long this is going to be. And if you're just stuck in, analysis paralysis for, the foreseeable future, you're not going to get anything accomplished, and your actions are going to deteriorate. So, a couple different action plans related to this. The first one is this thought of, up or down. Like, you literally have to make a decision in the direction you want to go. Like, do you want to go in a more positive direction, or do you want to sit at home and suffer in certain ways? And I realize that may seem cavalier for me to say for some of you that are dealing with tremendous challenges, like the loss of loved ones and things along those lines. And I am not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to be unsympathetic or anything along those lines. But I don't want to see you continue to suffer is really what it comes down to. So I would hope that all of you guys want to trend in an upward direction, and it starts there. The next piece of reflection that I wanted to talk about is in August of 2019. So for those of you who know me and know I get on my soapbox related to this issue, I am very big on the philosophy of Stoicism. Stoicism, I'll give you two books, and one book led me to the next, but The Obstacle is the Way is a modern book. It was created in the last few years by an author who I love. His name is Ryan Holiday. The obstacle is the way is talking about like turning trials into triumphs, and obstacles into opportunities and all of that. It stems from a book by Marcus Aurelius. Meditations is the name of that book. Read both of them. They're just phenomenal books. I strongly suggest you read both of them, especially today. That's something that these books are always wonderful books, but in today's context, they're unbelievable. The thing about Marcus Aurelius is he was the emperor of Rome, and during his reign, this is an interesting story, but during his reign, he had a 15-year period where there was a pandemic. And there are things that he did in reflection to that, to help his people during the pandemic. He literally went through, the castle or whatever it was, and marked all the items throughout, all of his possessions that need to be sold off in order to raise money so he could give food to his people. During that 15 years, all the senators and all sorts of, powerful politicians in Rome left the city. Marcus Aurelius did not leave Rome. He felt it was important to be by his people. There were other things he did. He relinquished all of the debts that people owed, Rome in terms of, the government on land and different leases that they had. He let all these people, free of debt. He did so many different tremendous things. But the coolest thing that I think Marcus Aurelius did in his life was actually the book Meditations. Because as the leader, maybe the most powerful leader in the history of the world, if you think about like Rome and the empire, the Roman Empire at the time, it was spread across the entire globe, and he was at the helm of that. If you think about that, for somebody to reflect on a daily basis on a very human level about the human challenges that he's doing, call it like a journal, for him to do that throughout his life, and for us to have a copy of that we can then reflect on and use to see what the most powerful man in the world was reflecting on in the challenges that he had, is very humbling. It's something that definitely was uplifting to me, and it's something that I realized that what, we all go through these very human challenges, just like all of you guys are going through it today. 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man in the world, Marcus Aurelius, was also going through it. I don't know about you, but that gives me a little solace. There's a very famous quote that comes out of Meditations, and it's, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So I want to tell you a personal story that I think that is a part of my family history that is pretty awesome. So if you go back to my grandmother's sister was engaged, or was actually married, I should say, to a gentleman in Italy, my grandfather. And he basically, they were scheduled to, him and his wife, my grandfather and his wife were scheduled to leave to go to, to come to America, which was a very expensive journey at the time. They had bought, fares on a boat, and it was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks out before they were supposed to leave when his wife passed away. And they had saved all this money. They were making this journey to America, and now he had 2 tickets, and it was him and his wife had just passed. And he basically decided to ask now my grandmother, but at the time was the sister of his wife, to journey with him on the trip to America, because it was a big deal and he didn't want the ticket to go to waste. On their journey over here, they fell in love. It was a 3-week journey. They fell in love. They came to America together. They wound up getting married, years later. And through the death of his wife and the, eventual, marriage to his wife's sister, my family was born. And if that hadn't happened, if that whole, tragic situation hadn't occurred, there would be no Angelina today. And I think about that, and if you go back in anybody's family history and you think about all the tragedy that led to life, it's really just an unbelievable thing. That's how our world was born. So, I know that it's definitely raining right now, but I was thinking about, like, okay, in the rain, what came out of the rain for me? Well, I know one thing that came out of the rain for Angelina. This probably would have never happened otherwise, but we have painter's tape all over our floors, and we're doing hopscotch in the middle of the hallway. And I know that, my daughters are having a ball doing it. And it's, it's something that we would have never used painter's tape to, put it in the middle of the hallway. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. They're jumping and, doing all sorts of things in the house that wouldn't have happened. They put pillows all over the place. They're jumping off of ottomans, like, diving into pillow mountains and forts. And, it's been a different experience, but it's definitely been a loving experience. And I know that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I know for me, we always journey and go all over the place, like to visit family for Easter. This is the first Easter that we spent inside of our house, like just the 4 of us. And honestly, it was just an incredible Easter. It was my favorite Easter that I've ever had to date. And that's not a shot at any of the rest of my family, but it just really was a special time that we got to spend together. So, the point is there's a lot of good that could come out of the bad. And we just have to shift our thinking in terms of that. Along those lines, I want to give you an action plan. And the action plan is like, for starters, like, how can you be stronger from all of this? Like, what can you learn from what you're dealing with today, to whether it's your business, whether it's your life? I know for one, I'm terrible at keeping in contact with my friends. I love them to death. There's, it's not a shot at them, but it's just the truth. I'm just busy. I'm constantly running around doing things. And, out of all of this, I realized, like, I need to make a concentrated effort to keep them in my life and keep those relationships strong, because I miss them. And I miss them more than ever now. And I'm reconnecting with all of them and everything else. And it's been a special time period for that. But that's something that would not happen if it wasn't for this pandemic. So there is strength that could come out of this. There's an exercise that the Stoics used to do, and it's called turning the obstacle upside down. And basically, you look at any challenge and you think, what good could come out of this? And that's what you focus on. So I would suggest that whatever you're dealing with, do the best you can. I know with the loss of a loved one, it's very hard to do. But sometimes, I'll give you an example, when you lose a loved one, or I'll use myself as the example, I'm watching, people, lose, their friends and their family. And that's been certainly impactful on me. Like, the good that the upside down of that, the good that's come out of that for me is, I've been expressing myself heavily to my parents, to my brothers, to my, my wife, my children, about how much I love and care for them. And, I think that is the form of strength, and that is the form of turning the obstacle upside down that has come out of some of this for me. I hope that you guys are getting the same lessons out of this. Another thing that I would suggest you do is read The Obstacle is the Way and read meditations. I think that both of them could be very therapeutic for all of you. And even if you're not suffering, even if grief is not something that's even on your radar at this point, these will help you in life. They're outstanding books. They're 2 of my favorite books that I've ever read. So the next reflection comes from January of 2014. And, it's also January of 2014, like, we had some controversy go on, within the office, and, there's a message that I had to put out. And one of the things that I talked about is also a Stoic idea. It's the more we value things outside of our control, the less control we have. Now, clearly, that's an interesting thing because, we can't control any of what's going on right now. I understand that. But we can control what we're doing. And, some of you guys have done some unbelievable things. I started with, whether it's, you're making masks or, different, you're making connections for people so doctors can get the equipment that they need, the materials that they need. All that is just it's such a beautiful thing. And some of you guys are just being really good humans and, getting groceries for, the people that live in your building or the people that live, your neighbors, and, if they're elderly or if they're, more feeble, whatever you want to call it. There are some unbelievable things that people are doing. We can control that. We can control picking up the phone and calling our friends, calling our family, calling our, potential clients, and seeing how people are doing. We have to value those things. We can't value, like, is there going to be a vaccine? Because we don't have control over that. So hopefully those things happen. And, and I believe that, those in the medical field and research and all that stuff, they need to value those things because they can control that. But, the everyday person, myself, in real estate, we can only control what we can. And I would suggest we focus on that. I listened to an awesome podcast the other day. You guys have probably heard me talking, ad nauseum over Tim Ferriss. I love him. I think he's a brilliant guy. I think he does an excellent job with his podcast. He brought Ryan Holiday onto the show. And, he basically, they were talking about, all these different, things that, about pandemics and about COVID-19 and the ways that they're approaching it and all of that. And they went into a little bit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, they were talking about, obviously the physiological and safety needs come first. And, once you get past that, how do you get to these other levels? So I want to go back for a second to Nelson Mandela. Now, all of us knew that he's been in prison. Anybody who knows anything about Nelson Mandela knows that he was in prison, during apartheid, and he was in prison for many, many years. I heard the story of his triumph. What I've never heard before, and I actually did a little research on that I thought was interesting, and I want to point out a couple of things, which are these. Nelson Mandela spent the first 18 of his 27 years in prison in Robben Island, in the Robben Island prison, which is a brutal prison, in South Africa. And he was confined to a small cell without any bedding. He had no plumbing, and he was forced to do hard labor in a quarry for 18 years. He could write and receive a letter once every 6 months. And once a year, he was allowed to meet with a visitor for 30 minutes. 18 years, this was his cell. There was no plumbing. There was no bedding. He did not have contact with the outside world. So I read that, and first of all, just if you think about what we're dealing with, we're confined to our own homes. We could talk to whoever we want at any given time that we want, with today's technology. And a lot of us are suffering. And yet Nelson Mandela, in reflecting upon those 18 years, comes out with a quote, "I didn't survive, I prepared." So, I mean, that's just such a powerful thought. And, when Tim Ferriss, and Ryan talk about this, Tim Ferriss went kind of like deeper and deeper onto this subject. And one of the things that he spoke about that was interesting to me is he said, yes, there are people that are dealing with the most basic needs. And you need to, if you're dealing with the most basic needs, like that is priority number one. There's nothing more important than that, and fully understand that. He said, but once you get past that, he said that the thought process that I have, this is Tim talking, is there's a question that I ask myself, a couple questions. First is, how can you make the next 3 to 6 months some of the most enjoyable and productive of your life? So, he said, like, use that 3 to 6 month, time frame as just assuming like it's just a placeholder as how long this is all going to take. So if that is the question that you ask yourself, like, your job is to figure that out. Figure out how to make this the most enjoyable and productive. For some of you, it might be completely checking out and, spending time with your family. I completely respect that. I understand that. I think that the productive part is, how do you make this productive in today's world, knowing that you can't do the open houses and you can't do some of the things that you would be doing otherwise? Hard question to ask, but it's a good question to ask. The next thing that he asked is, how can you make the next 3 to 6 months something you look back on as a sacred time that you really treasure? The point is the goal is not just to survive. If the goal is just to survive, that's a very low threshold. Like, the goal is like, how do you thrive, not just survive? So the action plan that I put in place for that is, one, if you've never seen it before, I really encourage you to check out the Daily Stoic. The Daily Stoic is Ryan Holiday's YouTube channel, and they give a video, like, I think it's 3 times a week, about Stoicism. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, there's new videos that go on there, and it's about Stoic ideas, and I think that it'll put your head in the right place. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. The next thing that I would encourage you to do is really think about those two questions. Like, what can you do to make this the most enjoyable and productive time of your life? What can you do to make this something that you look back on as a sacred time that you really treasure? That, to me, are 2 challenges that I would put out to you. They're not easy. I understand they're not easy. But here's the thing, and I'm going to pause because I'm a little tongue-tied here. The interesting part about these 2 questions is this. If you fail miserably in these 2 questions, like truly fail, like you don't make this the most enjoyable and productive time of your life, it's still okay, because there's such a thing as failing up. So the idea of failing up is, you know what, like, you didn't reach your goals, but you're still in a better place than you were had you not tried to aspire to reach those goals. And, that's kind of where we're at right now, is like, set your sights on, this is going to be the best experience of my entire life, the most productive and the most enjoyable. And if you fall short of that, so be it. But at least it's better than sitting here and wallowing in sorrow and in this defeatist, mentality that we have, myself included, by the way, that, like, this can be a special time if we make it such. The next reflection, and these are kind of quick hitter reflections, and these are certain, quotes and things that I heard that I wanted to share with you guys. The first one is, the demons hate fresh air. I love this quote. I think it's so spot on. If you guys are dealing with challenges in your life right now, get outside, go for a walk, go for a run, do some jumping jacks, some push-ups, whatever you got to do. Go sit on your patio, your deck, go walk down the street, whatever it is you need to do, but get outside, because it's true. The demons hate fresh air. The more you get out and exercise, the more you get fresh air, the better you're going to feel. Go outside. Safely, of course. Next reflection. Every day is Groundhog Day. So you guys have seen the movie Groundhog's Day, I'm sure you have. And I absolutely love this thought process. So we're waking up every day, and you got the same environment around you. And, that might be a terrible thing for some of you. It might be a great thing for some of you. It depends on what the environment is, and it depends on where your head's at. But the one thing about Groundhog's Day, if you think back to the movie, is every single day he wakes up and it's the same day over and over again. So if you have the same day over and over again, what he starts to realize is, here's what I could do to make that day better. And he starts to figure out what the perfect day looks like. Every day is Groundhog's Day right now. You need to figure out what the perfect day looks like for you. And I think that you guys should all take the time to really just decipher, like, what does my schedule look like? And you know what? Like, today wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Tomorrow I'm going to tweak this. And, that's going to make this more productive or more enjoyable. Every single day, you have this unique ability right now to make it, the perfect Groundhog Day. So do that. Make it the perfect day. Figure out what that looks like for yourselves. Next reflection is, forget the noun, do the verb. So this is, I put a picture of evolution here. And the reason I put a picture of evolution here is because the thing about forget the noun, do the verb, what it really refers to is forget about your title. A lot of times, and title can mean a lot of things. Title can mean dad. Title can mean district manager. Title can mean friend, father, husband. Can mean all different things. For you, you have your own titles. But I think what happens is sometimes we get caught, and I'm going to go really less personal and more about like the business world. Some of us feel like, all right, like I have this title. I am the expert on Maplewood. I am the expert on Summit. I'm the expert on Short Hills. You have this title that like, I specialize in X, whatever X may be. That's all great. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is sometimes that title actually pigeonholes you, because now you fall into, this is what that needs to be, or this is what I am. Forget about what you are. Your actions are what you are. So it's all about doing the verb. Like if you are the top agent in the marketplace, you need to act like the top agent in the marketplace. What does a top agent do? A top agent reaches out to their clients every single day and continues to build those relationships. Like the reverse is also true. If you are a weak agent or you're brand new in real estate and you think that like, oh my God, I came into real estate right now during a pandemic, I don't necessarily know how to get myself to that next level, and all of that could be true, but don't fall into the title of a brand new real estate agent. Do the verb. Take the actions necessary to not be a brand new real estate agent. Take the actions necessary to get yourself to the next level. Reach out to people that you know. Introduce yourself as the agent in the marketplace in a respectful way in the context of what's going on. But make sure people understand that you're there for them, that you're a resource, because that's what people need right now. They need a resource. And you, by being the noun and falling under the trap of this is my title, this is my expertise, this is my specialty, whatever you want to say, you're going to fail right now. You need to do the verb. You need to take the actions. And I want you to just all focus on that. Like that's such an easy thing to reflect on right now. And it's the evolution of who you want to be, who you want to become, what you want to achieve. All of that is about doing the verb, taking the actions to get there. That's what this time should be about. The last reflection I want to give you has nothing to do with like, well, maybe it does. I was going to say it has nothing to do with, the world of real estate. It has more to do with like getting good information, but I actually take that back because I think that this applies to real estate as much as it applies to anything else. I've been on social media, all different platforms for years. I would say that I spend most of my time on one of three platforms, and that would be either Instagram, Facebook, or the last one would be YouTube. So those are the three that I typically spend most of my time on, if you call YouTube social media. But I kind of feel like it falls into that category because video is becoming more and more part of our world. What I've always had for years, but I have not spent a lot of time on, is Twitter. And I got to tell you, during this pandemic, I spend most of my time, like if I'm on social media, most of my time is spent on Twitter. Twitter is the best resource for information that I've ever seen. It's better than the news. It's certainly better than the news because, it's biased, but you're getting both sides of the story. It's immediate. It's faster than any other source of information that you're going to get. And it's infinite in terms of how many sources are out there that you could get good information from. If you want to learn more about any topic, all you got to do is hashtag whatever the topic is on Twitter, and you're going to get all the top results in the whole entire world like this. It's amazing. It is absolutely the best thing that I've ever seen for information. I've known that for a long time. I've never used it more than I use it during this pandemic. And I'm learning so many different things about real estate, so many things about health and medicine, so many things about the world right now and all the challenges that are going on. And all of it's coming from Twitter. I strongly recommend that you guys make an account on Twitter. I don't care if you never make a post in the history of life. If you go on there, they have what's trending on any given moment. And you're going to see what trends, the trend lines on any topic. A lot of it's political, but like I don't get lost in all of that. But even the political posts, like you get to see two sides of an issue in 30 seconds. I mean, it's very hard to do that with any other news source. It's been an awesome tool for me. I strongly recommend you guys take a look at it. So I'm going to leave you kind of what I started with this, which is my daughter. If I can learn from a 3-year-old and see from her reflections on the world that yes, there's rain, but the rain will bring flowers. I think that you guys can embrace the same. I mean, it's something that's innate. It's built inside all of us. It's just that, you know, the world jades us, and, you know, and we're all jaded, and we're all, you know, running around with all of our own anxieties and all of our grief, and, you know, all of our, you know, Maslow's, like, you know, hierarchy of needs, all of that swirling around in our head on a subconscious level. If we saw the world through the eyes of a 3-year-old right now, we would realize that there are going to be flowers coming, and there are flowers out there if you reach out for them. So I appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen to my rants. And I thank you guys, and I hope that all of you stay healthy, and I'll be back next week. All right. All the best to you guys, and thank you so much for everything.